So hello everyone and welcome to the Talking Stick Show. So I'm joined by Hayley Trezise this morning. Hello Hayley.
Hi Del.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Good,
It's very lovely to see you again.
It's really good to see you as well, and this is the second time you've come onto the show. So what's new with you? What have you been up to lately?
Gosh, I can't remember the last time that we met, actually, the last interview, but I guess a lot has happened, has changed, has developed, has moved on, whichever way, in whatever form. But the regards to my work, yeah, I'm doing online movements. I've kind of created a new online movement. I'm now sort of like opening my door to face-to-face healing work, doing lots of amazing artwork, actually sacred artwork. Yeah, so lots of different things really.
So I think the last time we spoke, it was kind of, I think we were just starting lockdown. I think that was the first part of the start of lockdown. So what has it been like for you, and what has this restrictions done for you and taught you about life, and how has it been for you being through this process we've all been going through, the in and out of lockdown? How has it been for you, Hayley?
Well, on regards to just the lockdown, I stopped, the world stopped, and that allowed me to kind of stop and have that need to move forward and need to kind of carry on. So it opened up new doors really, especially with my artwork, and I gave the time to that, and I gave permission. I gave myself permission to explore and see new, just find that inner artist that's not just fashion and quirky clothes, and which I've been wanting to do for ages. So, and it's quite interesting because I'm really obsessed with space, always have been since I was a child, and I've discovered that it's almost like those roots have been kind of redeveloped and come forward now in kind of three-dimensional, with whatever different ways. But I have to say a lot has gone on for me this year, good and definitely not so good, meaning I've had deaths. My father passed away and my mother-in-law passed away, and so it's been on that level, I can't even really explain it, quite transformational in a way, because life and death does that to you when you're faced with death. So that's kind of the other side of what's been going on. But so.
And that's it, when we're greeted with, there's so many different things which can happen to us, and for my own personal what's going on in my life, the faith has really helped me get through it all, and that deep faith and that deep knowing of there's the infinite world out there and the many layers which we live upon. So what was it like for you? So if it's okay with you, if you're comfortable talking about mourning a little bit, because it's something I've done a few times in my life, and there's something personal for me going on at the moment, which is kind of a bit of a crossroads of things going on. So mourning, what's mourning like for you? Because for me it's a strange process, and it's not just, it's so different for absolutely everyone, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, we fear mourning because it doesn't make us feel good, but it's so essential, it's so essential to allow grief. This is my opinion, to allow grief to step forward. And regards to my own journey with that, I don't want to push it away, for therefore it'll come to me years down the line. I really want to honor it, and I am honoring it. So when it arises, rather than just going, no, go away, it's just like, actually, no, it doesn't feel good, but I'm stepping into it and allowing it to come out. And because my body is, I'm not afraid to express myself. So, and my body is one of my tools. So if my body's saying to me, hey, you need to relieve this grief and not be afraid of it, that's what I've been doing. And it's been like this, up and down, suddenly I'll hit a wall unexpectedly and just be like, poof, and memories, or the processes of caring for Dad would just be there. And and the grief would rise. So there's something in that, about loving and honoring grief. I think it's very, very powerful.
Beautiful, and the importance of being in touch with our own feelings. This morning I did each morning, well, most of the mornings I do prayer work. So I speak when I wake up, and I just started this overwhelm of crying when I was saying the prayer, and it was for me to say that I'm getting more used to in touch with my own feelings and all of this stuff. What was going on for me growing up and seeing, say, my family members who didn't show emotion or anything like that. That was something innately I took on, and I've realized lately that I've been taking a lot of that on, and I've been really kind of coming back to the childlike state again, where they wear their heart on the sleeve and their emotions are right in front of them and they express it. And like you say, expressing yourself, and that's something for me that's been one of my personal, I'd say, lessons at the moment, is truly trying to express myself and get in touch with that emotional side of what I've gone through. And my gran and nan passed on, and dealing with those energies, and like you say, having to deal with there and then, instead of a few people I know who's have lost loved ones and they can't let go of them, and they get into this spiritual sickness where they're just fantasizing or of them being with them all the time, and they can't let go. And what you're saying is it's so important to do the mourning process and be in touch with it and just let it happen to what it presents itself in a way.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just, it's important. I feel it's important too. And and obviously it's so much, it's the loss of somebody that is the deepest grief, that you're not going to see that person again, and all of those beautiful things of touching the hand and having that conversation. And I think that's the thing that's is kind of that that when the grief really hits you, because you can't do that anymore. And if you just hold on to that, then yeah, exactly what you said, we become sick in whatever way, physical, spiritual sickness arises. And to release it, yeah.
And so let's speak about some of the ways to release it and help with working on releasing it and honoring yourself. So you do a lot of dancing. What would you recommend for people going through mourning process to help them find some healing and comfort with what they're going through?
Well, I mean, just to start off with, giving yourself permission and knowing that it's okay to grieve is the first point of call, I think. And even going into a room and just creating a safe place for you to do that, or in the hands of another person. There's something very beautiful when you can really grieve, and that person is not touching you, not speaking, just sat there holding that space for you to be able to just go whoa, 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 and just carry it out, but also on your own, in a room, just to honor that space. But regards to the movement, you're right. For me, movement is incredibly powerful, because our bodies store emotions and grief and trauma, and they get locked in and into our system. And so releasing it and allowing that, putting some darn good music on that you like, and that really gets you, even music that moves that emotion, when you play a certain track that just gets you, and allowing that to up and come out, and come out in tears, but also come out in movement, allowing, checking in with your body of like, where are you holding that? Where is it? And you might, you might get some incredible insight when you actually start asking this incredible thing of like, well, why am I feeling that? Why are you hurting me so much? Why am I limping? And why have I limped for 6 months? It's because I'm holding on to that grief that I never released.
Yeah, and that's it, is holding on and holding on. I've held on before when some of my family members passed away, and like you say, there is a certain sickness where it does become a manifestation in your own body of something, some illness. And from what I've learned is, through observation of being in my family and learning from them and them learning from their parents, it's kind of been a bit of an ancestral karmic cycle going on with not expressing your emotions and being the tough guy and all of that stuff. And for me, I feel like that is stuff I'm resolving at the moment, where I'm trying to be all this tough guy, but realistically, I've got the feminine and masculine inside me, and I have to honor both of those parts.
I think that's really lovely, Dale, and I think it's very, particularly, yeah, for a male, for a man, to really bring that emotion in and saying, hey, I you know, particularly if it's females. Well, actually, crying in front of men is probably harder, actually, because it's, you put yourself in a vulnerable situation, because it's perceived as a general. I'm completely generalizing here, that it's not allowed. But I think it's wonderful, and it's a wonderful teaching, I think, for when and particularly a man cries, because it allows other people to really touch into their vulnerability and their feminine side, you know, that femininity in them, which we all have, of course.
And that true self of, if the strength of a man or a woman is crying, because that is strength in itself, because you're actually honoring your feelings and honoring who you are.
Yeah, exactly. And there's always a thing where it gives permission for others to do the same when we do it. You know, it's because we're putting ourselves in that vulnerable situation.
Outstanding. So what's your view on people who pass away then? What do you, in your system, believe what happens to people when they do pass on?
Well, they go to the light, they transition to back to source. And I mean, obviously there's some spirits, well, in my work, the spirits that do get, suffering beings is what we call them, you know, get stuck in the middle world, which is our world in our everyday life. And, you know, we kind of walk amongst them, really. But I say suffering beings because they're not really supposed to be here. You know, they're suffering. And so one of my jobs, or one of my things I do, is to help that spirit pass over and pass on to the light, to whatever you want to label it. I don't like labels, so I don't want to kind of call it the heavens, or, you know, source, whatever, you know, whatever it is, because I think that's, I want to honor people's views upon that, really.
Outstanding.
Essentially, it's going back to spirit, going back to where we began, really.
And I had a visitation from my gran when she passed away. There was a big connection between me and my gran. She always said, even though she loved us all the same, she always kept saying that I was a personal favourite. For some reason, she always used to give me extra stuff and always tell everyone off if they were doing anything towards me. And I had a very deep connection with my grandma, and she passed away. And I had a dream. Probably about 4 days later, I was sat next to loads of pyramids, and it felt like I was in, like, say, Atlantis time or anything like that. And there was a huge circle with like loads of different geometry lit up, and I was just having a conversation with her in this kind of like desert place. And she was young. She was like young. She looked so beautiful, and she was in a, probably looked like she was in the 20s, 23s or something. And that for me was a big realization. This was a while ago, and that was for me when I was going through the awakening, where I understood that there was something much deeper going on, and there was a big connection to. Just 1 second, I'm just going to grab my little girl who's just run in the room for 2 seconds. Sorry about that. My little girl came in. I could see her running around and jumping onto the bed. so, so yeah, going back to the story I was talking about. So yeah, I was next to my gran, and that for me was a big realization that she was with me and all the time, even though she has separated herself in the physical reality, she's still there with me in the spirit world.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful knowing, actually. And a lot of people are very skeptical, and I don't want to go into that, but there's it's incredible to have that knowing, basically. Yeah.
Outstanding. And so what we wanted to talk a little bit about today, because for me, when I was doing this prayer work this morning, you were talking about making things sacred and how everything is sacred. And I had that realization when I was doing the prayer and I was crying, that I was kind of connecting to that sacred energy and that kind of beauty. So let's talk a little bit about sacred and what that truly means, and how can we make our life sacred, and what disconnects us from being sacred as well. Let's kind of dive into all the different layers.
Well, I think it's quite an interesting question, because I've asked myself that, because one of my sacred work is art of the sacred, and that just came to me on a journey I did. And so since I thought, well, what does sacred mean? Well, what does sacred? I actually think it's an important question to ask, what sacred mean to the individual, because I think it's there's so many layers to it, and there's so much depth. I think, in life itself, like having a child, a newborn child. I mean, that's a sacred act in itself. There's something that is so incredibly, overwhelmingly beautiful that it kind of isn't of words, and the energy of when you walk out into nature, and you can just feel the presence of something. And so there's something sacred about that. I mean, of course, in Christian form, it's, God is sacred. Well, God is, you can't see God, or maybe not, maybe some can, I don't know. But so it's something, it's like almost like the curiosity of something unseen, or that knowing that there is something there, and that is incredibly sacred, because there is power in that. There's energy in that. It is energy, and therefore it becomes sacred, and then there's sacred objects as well, something that means something so dearly to you, or that gets passed down through generations, that it becomes a special thing.
So let's go a little bit back into programming, and why programming's disconnected us from learning about what sacred is. So if you'd like to kind of go into a few layers of what, so say if you're being born, being a baby, what are stuff in the world which stops you from connecting to that sacredness and seeing everything as sacred. Let's talk about things which stop people first from experiencing it so they can understand it.
Well, I think when we're born into this world, we are our true sovereignty. We are our true selves, and there's nothing outside of ourselves that has affected us to make us small, or to make us push us back, or whichever way you want to say that. And I think life itself can create a lot of fragmentation for that sovereignty to be demolished completely, or separated, and that can be through so many things. I mean, I think actually it's quite endless, and through ourselves as well, through our own self-sabotaging, and listening to people telling us that we should and shouldn't do things, and trauma that has happened in our lives. And there's so many elements,
and I think that's a very big part to touch on, is trauma. I have some clients who come see me where they can't connect to anything sacred or connect to external source connection because they're traumatized to be in the body. So every time they want to do it, there's a trauma which comes in for them. And let's talk about trauma and what really does that do to our body and our dream world and our spirit.
Well, I think when we have trauma, it's almost like that fight. I mean, particularly deep trauma, we go to that fight or flight mode. And the same with my work with soul retrieval, once you get soul loss. your body and your system and your spirit, everything, but particularly your spirit, of course, it goes into that fight or flight mode where it goes, or part of it goes, and then we're left with the body and the spirit, and you're trying to sort of like deal with it and carry on with it, yet a part of ourselves, part of our sovereignty, part of our soul has disappeared, has gone. And then on from that, that's how, then you want to kind of people feel that up with drugs and alcohol and whatever, whatever it is, just to that need to become whole again. But actually what's missing is that soul, that part of yourself, really, your true self.
Outstanding. And what would you recommend for people with trauma who want to release it so they can start having that sacred living again?
For themselves, what they can do themselves?
Yeah.
I think the thing that's just come to me now is shaking, actually doing a shake, and allowing your, on a physical level, allowing your body to shake it out and shake that thing out. And because it's allowing those things to rise up. It's the same as what animals do. It's like releasing. A shake is a release, and so you're releasing it out, basically. I mean, that's just one thing that's just come to my mind now. But of course, I think if people are in deep trauma, I think having soul retrieval, or the work that you do, having someone to help them bring it back, I think, is incredible work. And it's needed, really, to have that assistance.
There's a lot of it. For me, I've had to go back to each and every, I'm still doing it back and back, because there'll be some times I went to Merlin's Cave the other day, and I went on this bridge across on the cliff, and I started getting really scared because of heights. I've died a lot in past lives from high stuff, and there was a little childhood trauma of mine where I was in a castle, probably about 4 years, and everyone went up to the top, and I remember crying and screaming, saying, don't take me to the top of the castle. And I didn't want to go up the stairs because I was scared of the heights. So I had this traumatic event which came for me when I was going on like a pilgrimage type energy to the site to go there, and all of a sudden the universe showed me straight away, this is something which you have to resolve in a way. So that was for me a huge lesson. Like, each day we're greeted with stuff which you can remember, where we have gone through trauma and we need to resolve it.
Yeah, definitely. And it's about letting it go as well. So like knowing that story, it is a part of your life, it is a part of your history, but it doesn't need to be a part of your life from this point forward. That whole idea of just letting it go. And I mean, this sounds so much easier than it is. But that idea of really letting it go, it doesn't need to be your story anymore, apart, because we're still living, and we're still moving forward, and we're growing all the time. So
yeah. And that for me was a hard one to get over, and there is a big releasing and, like you say, letting go there. For me, I'm currently at the moment actually writing down my own story, so I know it more. I'm going back to the earliest memories I can remember, and I'm not going to do a book. I may do a book further on when I'm a bit older, when I've had the kids, well, they've grown up, blah blah. But yeah, so I'm doing this story where I'm actually going, which I recommend to people listening as well, is go back to the first memory you can ever remember, and I'm just writing my story really slowly, taking my time to remember as many things I can possibly can, because I do feel like sometimes we do forget about traumas as well, because they can hold such charge in us that all we want to do is just completely forget about them. Then you remember them, you're like, whoa, this is something I need to work on.
yeah, definitely. There's a process, isn't there, of letting it go, basically.
Definitely. And that's for me. So going back to what we were talking about growing up, and for me, from my own personal experience, the world wasn't what I wanted. I went through school, I didn't know what I was doing. I ended up going out partying when I was a bit older, and I was always on the search for, like you say, feeling that sacredness, because I feel like when you're in touch with making things sacred, making your living sacred, breathing sacred, it kind of brings you back to this self frequency. And for me, it's been such a like say rites of passage to remember I am sacred, and every single day I walk on this sacred earth. I have the land sacred, everything around me sacred, and it gives you inspiration, doesn't it, to really understand what the truth is out there. The trees are alive, the grass is alive, everything's alive, and we
Yeah,
forget all about that because we're so embroiled into this system and this kind of farm where we're kind of like farmed a little bit, and we're left to do what we need to do, and we kind of have to escape in a
yeah,
sense, escape our own reality out the back door.
definitely. And that's all created from, you know, thoughts. We're all like always in the future of like thinking about what we've got to do or thinking about the past. And, you know, like you said, a moment of drinking a simple cup of tea can be incredibly sacred if you're forgetting about all of those thoughts and just in all of your senses at that present moment in time, and feeling that warmth of a cup of tea and the taste and in the surroundings that you are in. And, you know, I mean, it's really basic stuff, really, yet we find it incredibly hard to do. Because we're always thinking about other things.
That's it. And yeah, I love that when you said everything is sacred. When you said that to me, that was really painted a big picture for me, because in a sense we're always looking for sacred stuff, always looking for sacred sites, but to have the realization that we are embodied of the sacred, and what is around us is sacred. And it's that kind of aha moment, isn't it, when you realize you're like, you've been searching and it's just all around you.
Yeah, yeah. It's just acknowledging it, just stopping, you know, not necessarily meaning physically stopping, but just stopping and bringing your moment to that. And I, you know, absolutely guarantee, you know, if everyone was who was going to watch this right now, just to stop and actually really open all of your senses and just acknowledge something, there would be you could connect to that is sacred, even if it's like my plants, you know, behind, you know, just I love them, you know, or being outside and hearing the crow. I can hear a crow. You know, there's something so sacred about that.
Outstanding. And that for me was something when I went through my spiritual journey. Um, was say probably about 8 years
Today.
when I was going. Can you hear me? Okay, it just
Yeah.
broke up a little bit. Perfect. So when I was going through my awakening in 2012, I was I felt like I was a bit of a bulldozer, where I was trying to figure out everything. I was a bit lost in my own ego, and I was just trying to figure out who I was. And I bought all these crystals around me and making all these nice sacred objects. Then it only took me really probably about 3 or 4 years ago where I actually had that realization where I've got to treat everything as sacred, and I've got to really give the crystals, everything around me, honor and love and gratitude, and not kind of walk around like a child. And my way of being kind of changed for me, where I honor, have medicine spread on my windowsill, which honors me to connect me to the Great Spirit, and regular prayers on the house, regular intentions on the house. And before I was kind of like a little, my toe was a little bit in it, but now I'm, like you say, I'm embodying everything around me and understanding that where we live has to be sacred. It has to be somewhere you can come back and you can be yourself, you can let down, you can release and understand there are unseen, like you say, those spirits who are stuck in the in-between world. We have to have the responsibilities to get rid of those if there are some negative ones out there as well.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It's appreciation, isn't it?
Appreciation, definitely. And you did some artwork which I'll pop onto this video as well, which really inspired me. It was kind of like, can you talk a little bit about them? You're doing different pieces each day, and there was so many different ones. What was the inspiration behind doing that? And can you explain a little bit about what I'm going on about?
Yeah. Yeah. So that it's like I said, ever since I was young, teenager, I've been obsessed with tunnels and that idea of going into something in space. And it's, you know, life has gone on and da 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 da, and I've carried on, and now I'm sort of it's almost like, oh gosh, yeah, I'm still drawing the same things and obsessed with it. Yeah, I'm in a very different place now. Of course I am, you know, I'm much older. But these sculptures I created they're basically the idea, it's like a void for me. But the void could mean, so it's that idea of going into something and transitioning into another world, or the idea of going in, you know, just, yeah, on the void to in life, you know, life-changing thing, you know, in which we can fear the void so much, yet it has so much power, you know, standing at the threshold of something new, you know, and it's terrifying. So I love that concept. So I wanted to, and obviously also for a shamanic journey, that's it's kind of come journey. You know, I'm leaving this place and going somewhere else, to the upper level middle world. So that idea of going through something, I wanted to create that concept. And of course, you don't know where that's going to be. That's unique to the person who's doing that. So it holds many, many things. And so there I created these 3-dimensional fabric sculptures that you put on your wall. And I mean, I have to say, I absolutely loved and love making them. It's like bringing in, you know, it's all of what I do combined in these pieces. And kind of follow on from that as well, when I was looking after my dad when he was ill, I randomly started to draw. And I don't see myself as a 2D artist at all. But I just started to paint and draw, and I was sitting in the room and we were all caring for him and la la la. And then I realized, oh, actually, of course I can draw, of course I can paint. It's got nothing to do with being good. It was so powerful for me, being and then having all of these feelings and emotions and witnessing all what was going on. And it was such a healing for me on so many levels. And anyway, so I've carried on doing that. And now I've sort of, and it was all, I was finding that they were all around the void, all around this transition of tentatively on the edge of two worlds, or obviously, you know, knowing that dad's leaving us. So it all symbolized that without intention. It was totally intuitively just doing this. And since that, I've carried on and created these fabric pieces. So I've got, you know, like creating little voids with this little man or person. It doesn't necessarily need to be a man, but this person walking towards the void. I mean, they're not morbid. They're not about my dad's transition. It's just, it opened up something for me in my art and my sacred work, and bringing it all together. And you know, I'm loving the process.
So was that something you started doing when your father was passing away? Is that right?
Well, I made the 3D tunnel voids before, and I remember showing him, actually. I mean, I've tried not to cry, but I won't cry, but I remember him being fascinated by one of them, and it was just as we knew he was ill, and it was amazing. And I wish, you know, he could see all the other work that I've done now. But so I had already done those, but the drawings and then other stuff is carried on from there, you know, carried on from that since. But again, it's many, you know, many reasons, because I gave the time for it before, and because of lockdown and because of all those things, I opened the doors. I didn't let anything stand in my way. Actually, I didn't let me stand in my way. That's actually the biggest point, because it doesn't matter what anyone else does. It's me, isn't it? We are the only people that stand in our own way.
Outstanding. And that, from listening to that, it feels like you were in touch with your source connection, and that trust with yourself that you can draw, and how inspirational you doing that before the passing of your father, to kind of symbolize, and you kind of working in the unseen world and this seen world, doing something greater, and you're there creating these portals for when the transition comes. It's a really, really cool story. I'm glad I asked about that one.
Can I just add something very quickly as well?
Yeah.
The one thing that's happened over the last 2 days, which is another step of like, oh my God, I'm so right, doing the right thing, is a TV series contacted me, and I'm not going to give anything away, I'm not allowed to, but they basically TV series, and it's all around the void. It's just like, oh my God, you know. So life, when you're, you know, a message, I guess, when you're passionate and you believe in what you're doing and you're moving forward, keep going, because then things just open up and open up, open up and unfold and unfold, and you're shining, you know.
And that's
So, yeah.
outstanding, it really is. And that you're in touch with that dharma side of yourself, where you're not in the karmic retribution cycle, you're in the dharmic cycle, where you're in touch with your creativity side and you're source connected. You've got that deep trust and knowingness that everything will work out. And that's the beauty that everyone listening here, if to work through those traumas and work through themselves. And when you do that work and lots of work, the inner work on yourself, you forgive, let go, and enjoy life again. So many beautiful things can happen, like for what happened with you there. A few things have happened for me like that in my life, where there was a moment where I walked. It was when I found out some news about my family, which was made me really upset, and I was very stressed for probably about 3 days. And I went for a walk, and I was like, what can I do? What am I going to do for myself? And something just said to me, just go out for a walk when the sun's setting. And so I just decided, right, I'm going to go for a walk while the sun's setting. And as soon as I went onto the path and I walked over, usually I never see deers around my area. There was a big deer just walking in front of me. Then on this river, which is a very small river, there was never ever seen a swan there before in my life. And there's a huge swan just coming down. When as the sun was setting, the swan was coming towards me from down the river, and it just reminded of me to let go and just allow me to be here with the journey and through the trials and the highs and lows of just as a swan glides through the dream time and goes down the river. That's what I'm doing at the moment. I'm going through all these lessons on my way to the Great Spirit, on my way to the next stage. And that for me was, yeah, it was so emotional. And it was that big aha moment where I was like, wow, I am connected to source, and the spirit or whatever ancestors were communicating to me, the totems, to show me that we're here with you, and we're working with you. We're never working against you. It's only yourself which stops us from working and helping you.
Absolutely. And isn't that such a great example of what we were talking about previously, about stopping and noticing and acknowledging a magical moment that was presented to you for that time, and you connected to it, and you got all of that deep, incredible wisdom and knowledge that meant so much to you. That's a perfect example, you know, and then you've carried it on and you're talking about it now, you know. That's a sacred moment.
And those, some people do have sacred moments and they don't even realize. So they'll
Absolutely.
have a huge spiritual experience, a greeting from a loved one, and they'll be like, "Oh, it was just my brain, just one of
Yeah,
those dreams."
exactly. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about what's coming up for you. Then there's a retreat coming in Cornwall. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening with those.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about this retreat. It's a place that I go and visit at least once a year, and have done for the past 4 years, I think. And it's so incredible. And the last time I was there, or I think it was the time before actually, I said, I have to do something here. So, and because they have a big house, is in Penzance, just on the outside of Penzance. It's so mind-blowingly beautiful. The land itself is beautiful. And then they run retreats there. So, and I was just hiring a little cottage there. But so I've hired the whole place, and it's for 5 days, this retreat, from the 12th to the 17th of September. And we're going to be, I don't want to give too much away, but the baseline, I guess, will be shamanic work. And there'll be a lot of movement and creativity, bringing in art, ceremonies on the land. You know, there's going to be a wonderful vegetarian menu, and yeah, it's amazing. It really is a beautiful place. The house itself is gorgeous as well. So
And
if you are interested, please
I'll
get in
have
touch.
the link for that below as well. I'll pop it onto the Facebook and the YouTube link underneath. And so you've got some, have you got any dancing events coming up? Any of the movement events?
Yeah, I have. Because I've started, this is our, I think, the third block. And it was something that, because I do ecstatic awakening dance movement, and I was having this call to do something with the sacred, with movement. And I kind of did that thing of like, and anyway, I started doing it. And completely, there's structure to it, but it's intuitively led. And it's my connection, with the unseen realms. And it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And the feedback I've got has been really good. So the next block starts, it's a 4-week thing for £40. And it starts on I think it's the 14th of June, the next one. And that one is going to be, which is the same as the last one, it's going to be continued, is bringing in and working with the energies of the sacred fool. Yeah. So, I mean, as a general, there's guided meditations that take you to a place, and then it's about emptying yourself out and bringing movement into with certain intentions that are set by me. Sometimes I invite people to dress up. And the reason why that happens is not just because I love dressing up and I love it, but there's something that's really important when you put a full attention into an act and putting on ceremonial clothes or whatever it is, it just brings more of a presence into it, and I that's really important for me, as well as play.
And what is the sacred fall for those who want to, who want to know what is the sacred fall?
Yeah, well, it's quite interesting because the sacred fall can be perceived as being very ridiculous and fun and yeah, which it is, of course. But it's a very fine line between playing the fool, but also playing the other side. So it's almost like, I mean, this is for me. I've been working with the sacred fool in the spirit world for some time. So someone else's perception might be entirely different, but it's like it's working on that line between the two, and it's almost having feet in both sides. But when you're bringing in play, and that trickster element, that kind of everything gets turned upside down. So there's a serious element to it. Yeah, it gets turned upside down, so you can almost see when you're working with it from a completely different perspective. And I think there's a balance, and yeah, there's a serious side and a playful side, and I think that's why I love it.
Outstanding. And it reminds me of a story I've read to my kids a few times about the Coyote. It's this story where basically a lady starts creating a universe from the stars, and the Coyote comes and tries to rush everything and tricks her into creating this kind of chaotic universe. And yeah, that just reminded me of that story of the trickster spirit of trying to have fun and play in this world and take things lightly and be a bit of a fool, but like have both sides kind of in a grounded format.
Yeah, definitely. I think within my work as well, I think bringing in play and that performance side, and with movement as well, I mean, I love working in that way, because it strips the ego away, basically, because it can be quite terrifying to actually just bring in the playfulness and move our bodies, but when you invite that in, it just happens naturally, and it really opens up a lot, particularly the artist within. And I see art in everything, and we're all artists, but it allows that artist to come out, to find the poetry, to find the storytelling, to find and a beautiful creative art piece. Or yeah, I could go
And
on and on. I'll probably stop.
that's something I've been wanting to do for years, which I'm gonna probably do it for autumn when I do another ceremony at this place. I've always wanted to get everyone's face painted, so when they come, everyone just chooses their own colors and just completely face paint, and just to be there, like everyone's got different colors on the face, and there's none of that. There's just like you were talking about, just experiencing being the fool and just enjoying yourself and not having this condition of having to be anyone, just be there in the moment experiencing it.
It just drops it all away, you know, and then it also allows that truth to step forward. So if you were going to have face, oh my God, I feel a complete idiot, and da, da, da. But then when you're free of it all, and then that truth and can really come up. So then for tears can fall properly, you know, because we've let all of that go. It's very powerful.
And the way of life, letting it all go, one of the biggest important things to do is just always letting stuff go, stuff what we don't need to get, which hold us back anyway, which I learned from this morning when I had my own tears from prayer, which was just brought me into this teary mode where I was like, wow, there was something I have been not hiding from, but something I need to get in touch with more about myself. So Hayley, I really appreciate you for coming on the show, and I'd love to have you on again next year at some point at the back end of the year, because I really do enjoy these chats. You've got a very interesting and there's so much wisdom within the way you're speaking. So I really do appreciate you. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Del. You're a star. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Danny. And how can people get a hold of you as well if they want to come to any of your events? Because they are online for anybody out there. I've been to quite a few of them, so they're on Zoom. So how can people get a hold of you to get in contact with you?
Well, I guess the best way to contact me is via my website, which is Hayley Trezise. I guess, could you pop it up somewhere? But it's hayleytrezise.co.uk, or hayley.trezise@googlemail.com if you wanted to email me.
Thank you.
And
Thank you so much.
yeah, but please do get in contact for anything I've talked about.
And I'll be on one of those. I'll be back on now. Now I've gone through my own processing. I'll be ready to go. So I'll be in touch as well. So thank you everyone so much for watching. And if you could please subscribe as well if you haven't, I appreciate everyone. And thank you again, Hayley. Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Have a nice day. Bye bye. Bye bye bye.